From Helsinki, Finland, we're now in Sweden after crossing the Baltic Sea on a Viking or Viking Line ferry, covering 500 kilometers in 17 hours. Sweden is a Scandinavian country in Northern Europe. Scandinavian countries share common ethno-cultural North Germanic heritage with the kingdoms of Denmark and Norway. Stockholm is the capital of Sweden. Stockholm, Sweden is pronounced as Stockholm, Savaria. Sweden has a population of about 10 million. At around 8000 BC, there were already many people living in the present-day Stockholm area. But as temperatures dropped, inhabitants moved towards the south. Thousands of years later, as the ground thawed, the climate became tolerable and the lands became fertile. Some life moved back to the north. From about 1000 AD, at an archipelago site where the old town of Stockholm was, Vikings first started building. In 1634, Stockholm became the first capital of the Swedish Empire. In 1710, a plague killed about 20,000 of the population, which is about 36%. By the second half of the 19th century, Stockholm had regained its leading economic role. Stockholm became a modern, technologically advanced, and ethnically diverse city in the latter half of the 20th century. The vast majority of Stockholm residents work in the service industry, which accounts for about 85% of jobs in Stockholm. The almost total absence of heavy industry and fossil fuel power plants make Stockholm one of the world's cleanest metropolis. Stockholm was ranked first on its list of the greenest and most livable cities in the world. It is in the world's top 10 honest cities. Stockholm was ranked 24th on its list of the world's most global cities. Stockholm is the cultural, media, political, and economic center of Sweden. The average annual temperature is 10 degrees centigrade in Stockholm, Savaria. The Swedish language is a North Germanic language spoken natively by more than 9 million people, predominantly in Sweden and parts of Finland. The Swedish alphabet has 29 letters. Of the first 26 letters are the basic Latin alphabet from A to Z, plus 3 more letters. It contains 20 consonants and 9 vowels. It is largely mutually intelligible with Norwegian and Danish, along with the other North Germanic languages. Swedish is a descendant of Old Norse, the common language of the Germanic people living in Scandinavia during the Viking era. We're now in one of the highlights of our Scandinavia the Baltics trip, which is the Stockholm City Hall. We have known about it only as a place where the Nobel Prizes are given out. However, we never imagined that this is that one place where we can get goosebumps. The Nobel Prize is a set of annual international awards bestowed in a number of categories by Swedish and Norwegian institutions.
The feeling, the light comes from above. You have a feeling that it's open. That was the idea of the architect. The Swedish architect Ragnar Östberg. You can see him over the balcony, and you will see him when we go out. When we have visited this blue hall, and I have explained everything about it, we're going upstairs.
The Nobel Prize is in recognition of academic, cultural, or scientific advances. The will of the Swedish inventor Alfred Nobel established the prizes in 1895. The prizes in chemistry, literature, peace, physics, and physiology or medicine were first awarded in 1901. Medals made before 1980 were struck in 23-karat gold. The Nobel Prize ceremony is held on the 10th of December. A Nobel banquet at the Blue Hall follows after the ceremony. After the dinner, a dance is held in the Golden Hall. All of the categories of the Nobel Prize is awarded except for the Peace Prize, which is given out at the Oslo City Hall. Since 1901, the Nobel Prizes and the Prize in Economic Sciences were awarded about 600 times to almost 1,000 people and organizations. Some received the Nobel Prize more than once. The Nobel Prize is widely regarded as the most prestigious award available in the fields of literature, medicine, physics, chemistry, peace, and economics. This is certainly the best city hall we have seen and will ever see. There are other beautiful city halls like the one at Oslo, Norway, and the Guildhall in Londonderry, Northern Ireland. But they are not as impressive or stunning as this. The place suits the recipients of the Nobel Prizes, which gives them an appropriate tribute on their contribution to humanity. It's nothing short of saying, "Great job!" The Guildhall in Londonderry is surrounded by stained glass, while the City Hall at Oslo, Norway is surrounded by murals. We'll be going to Oslo and take a look at their City Hall after Stockholm. The front part of the Golden Hall, beside the Queen of Lake Mälaren, are representations of some of the countries in the world. This conveys the global outlook of the Nobel Prizes. The lady with the horn represents the 3 Baltic states, while the bonsai represents Japan. Russia and China has different hats, while the African is carrying bananas. Thailand is represented by the elephant. And the veiled but bare-breasted demure lady represents Turkey. Gustav Vasa was King of Sweden from 1523 for 37 years and has subsequently been labeled the founder of modern Sweden and the father of the nation. Stadshotellet is a restaurant in the Stockholm City Hall where you can order the same food which was served in last year's Nobel Prize dinner. You can enjoy this only if you will be spending plenty of time in Stockholm. Stockholm and Oslo have a separate Nobel Museum. However, they are not as exciting as the city halls. Most of the contents are just pictures of the recipients of the award and a description of their achievements. We continue going around Stockholm in our bus. That's the Stockholm Sheraton, where we'll be moving to as we extend our stay here. Gustavus Adolphus, or Gustav II Adolf, was the King of Sweden from 1611, credited for the founding of Sweden as a great power. He is regarded as one of the greatest military commanders of all time. During his reign, Sweden rose from the status of a Baltic Sea basin regional power to one of the great powers of Europe. These are now the new names and faces of Swedish royalty. The monarchy of Sweden is a constitutional and hereditary monarchy with a parliamentary system. The Kingdom of Sweden was originally an elective monarchy, but became a hereditary monarchy in the 16th century during the reign of Gustav Vasa. Carl John was King of Sweden and King of Norway from 1818 for 26 years. He was appointed as a Marshal of France by Napoleon, though the two had a turbulent relationship. Stockholm's population is approximately 1.5 million in the urban area and 2.5 million in the metropolitan area, for a total of about 4 million. The city stretches across 14 islands where Lake Mälaren flows into the Baltic Sea. The city is home to some of Europe's top-ranking universities. The Stockholm region alone accounts for over a third of the country's GDP and is among the top 10 regions in Europe by GDP per capita. The most noticeable thing which we experienced in Sweden was that it was expensive. The food was something to look forward to, since wherever we went, there was something new and good to try. We were relating this experience to a Filipino we saw, who informed us that it was going to be even more expensive where we're going next, at Oslo, Norway. Even if you are already familiar with the city with the hop-on hop-off bus, it would still make sense to purchase a pass, since it can be a cheaper and more convenient way of going around. Charles XII was the King of Sweden from 1697 for 21 years. He was a skilled military leader and tactician, as well as an able politician, credited with introducing important tax and legal reforms. Cities with high cost of living such as Stockholm and the rest in the Scandinavian countries has also high tax rates. The typical worker receives just 40% of his labor cost after taxes. The benefits that they get from the government in terms of education and healthcare are equally worth it. School lunch is free for all students in Sweden, and providing breakfast is also encouraged. The healthcare is mainly funded by taxes with nominal fees for patients. The Vasa Museum houses a 400-year-old salvaged Swedish warship. The warship was so poorly designed that it sank during its maiden voyage. During the accident, gusts pushed the ship so far over on its port side that water poured in through the open gun ports on the lower gun deck. Vasa had severe list and water came in through the gun ports. Within minutes, the ship was on the seabed at a depth of 32 meters. The problem is that the upper works of the hull are too tall and heavily built for the relatively small amount of hull below the waterline. This might have made the ship fast, but it put the center of gravity too far above the water. The reason for this is probably because Viking ships' shallow draft allowed navigation in waters only 1 meter deep and permitted beach landings. Surprisingly, it is the most visited museum in Scandinavia. There are also exhibits that expand on the history of Sweden in the 17th century. The museum also features 4 other museum ships moored in the harbor outside: an icebreaker, a light vessel, a torpedo boat, and a rescue boat. This is one of the most interesting part of the exhibit, which was a diorama of the cross-section of a ship. The absence of giant engines before shows human power controlling the ship. Electricity and ships made of steel had not yet been invented, and so were air conditioning and refrigeration. It shows the function of the rooms of an ancient ship with all the nuances, including a cat chasing a mouse. The outfits and utensils used, including the board game they used to play to pass the time, are also on display. Backgammon is one of the oldest known board games. Its history can be traced back nearly 5,000 years to archaeological discoveries in the Middle East.
Почти 400 лет назад, когда в Стокгольме сошел со стапелей военный корабль «Васа», шведская столица была небольшим городом с населением в 15 тысяч человек. Старый королевский дворец «Три короны» с оборонительной башней возвышался на холме. Богатые горожане жили в каменных домах вокруг площади Стультория и на соседних с ней улицах. Многочисленный бедный люд ютился в деревянных домишках в самом городе или на его окраинах. В Стокгольме был большой порт, у причалов которого теснились корабли. Сотни моряков ждали, чтобы подняться на борт и отправиться в плавание к берегам Польши и Германии. Корабли в Европе того времени. На его борту были 64 пушки. На 2 батарейных палубах должны были жить и работать 450 человек. В воскресенье, 10 августа 1628 года, корабль «Васа» вышел в свое первое плавание. Конструкция корабля не обеспечивала должной остойчивости. При входе в бухту неожиданно «Васа» дал резкий крен, и недалеко от острова Бекхольмен в пушечные порты левого борта хлынула вода. Тонул за считанные минуты, успев пройти всего около 1000 метров. Он ушел на дно с поднятыми парусами, флагами и всем, что было на борту. Погибло около 30 человек. Через несколько недель после кораблекрушения 5 сентября 1628 года в Королевском дворце Трекрунер собрались члены Государственного совета во главе с братом короля по отцу, адмиралом Карлом Карлсоном Юленьельмом. Но он начинает понимать, что там, в морской глубине, покоятся настоящие сокровища. Но можно ли поднять корабль? Судоподъемная техника 50-х годов 20-го столетия превосходила снаряжение.
This is the economic central part of Stockholm where most of the people are most of the time. The socializing central part of the city is the Kungsträdgården Park. The park's central location and its outdoor cafes makes it one of the most popular hangouts and meeting places in Stockholm. It also hosts open-air concerts and events in summer and an ice rink during winter. There are also a number of cafes, art galleries, and restaurants. In addition, every 1st of May, demonstrations held by the Left Party and other communist and left-wing parties usually take place here each year. The Vattenfall World Triathlon Stockholm kicks off with its swim start outside the City Hall. The bike leg takes you up and down the small hill of Västerbron and around the swim course lake. The flat run course passes the Opera House and the Parliament, culminating with the finish on top of the hill outside the Royal Palace. The relay competition is for a group of friends or colleagues. The German church is named for standing in the center of a neighborhood that in the Middle Ages was dominated by Germans. Though there were plenty of German merchants and craftsmen in Stockholm during the Middle Ages, they didn't possess a separate site for their religious services until 1558 when King Gustav Vasa permitted them to hold separate services. Today, the German parish sorts under the Church of Sweden, but as a so-called non-territorial parish. Approximately 2,000 members can still be found all around Stockholm. German services are still held every Sunday at 11 a.m. The original wood carving is in Stockholm's Storkyrkan Church. Storkyrkan is the oldest church in the Old Town in central Stockholm. It was originally the main parish church of Stockholm. It currently serves as the seat of the Lutheran Bishop of Stockholm.
Just a minute, I'll slip something on.
Jan Poike at 15 centimeters high is the smallest public monument of Stockholm. In winter, the little boy is also to be found wearing a winter hat and a scarf. It is described in very few tourist guides and is considered a secret tourist attraction. Meanwhile, included in the walking tour of Stockholm is a piece of cake in one of the local restaurants. It turned out to be one of the best cakes we ever tasted. The unfortunate thing about a trip like this is that it will probably be the last time we'll taste that cake. In cases such as this, ordering extra to take out and enjoy it at the hotel can maximize the pleasure and experience of a place. So from the residence of the Swedish monarchy, the Stockholm Palace, we end our tour with the group. The Scandinavia and the Baltics tour, which we joined, will be dispersing here. Some will be going back to work, some back to their retirement, and some will be continuing on with more travels. We'll be going back to the hotel to bid each other goodbye. We ourselves will be transferring to another hotel to spend a few more days in Stockholm. From here, we'll be proceeding to Oslo in Norway on our own, which was not part of the tour.